So, we are talking about Montreal Canadiens trades because, as we had discussed in the last Montreal Canadiens post-game video, there's one guy in particular that has made a name for himself in the Habs fanbase and on the team. He is none other than rookie out of Leksand, Sweden, Emil Heineman. Heineman has been shot out of a cannon ever since making his Montreal Canadiens debut earlier last year. He had played with the Laval Rocket, he was pretty good over there, had a cup of coffee throughout the NHL season in 23-24, but it wasn't until this preseason where Canadiens fans realized that, hey, this 22-year-old winger is pretty good, and he's got a lot of bite, he plays with drive, he doesn't ever let the foot off the gas pedal, and alongside of Oliver Kapanen, these two guys put together a very persuasive resume during the preseason as to why the Canadiens should give them a chance. And that's exactly what's been given in this season so far, and Heineman now, if you take a look at his point production, has 2 goals in 3 games played. He's on pace for 54 goals in an 81-game season. I say he does it. You can let me know your thoughts in the comments. Does he finish off the year with 54 goals and 0 assists? Okay, no, I'm not gonna go out there and lock that in, I'm just joking. But the reason we are talking about Heineman today is because of the trade which sent Heineman to the Montreal Canadiens in the first place. And while it might be easy to say, oh yeah, that was a great trade because the Habs got this young dude and now he's in the organization and now he's doing well, that actually is a pretty simplistic way to view it, because that trade that we're referring to actually did have some other pieces involved in it that are also doing very well for the Montreal Canadiens. Now, before we get into the actual Habs trade, let's talk about the first trade. Because Heineman, you might realize, was drafted by the Florida Panthers in the 2020 draft, second round, 43rd overall. He was actually sent over to the Calgary Flames in the Sam Bennett trade all the way back on April 12th, 2021. This was a pretty big deal because, of course, Sam Bennett now, if you take a look at him, he's a Stanley Cup champion, he's a very good player, and it was one of 2 trades that the Calgary Flames made with the Florida Panthers during this time span, preceding the Panthers' Stanley Cup win this previous year. Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, these 2 guys reunited from Calgary into Florida, and the Bennett trade included Heineman over to Calgary. Now, the second trade, which saw Heineman get sent over to Montreal, was made a little bit later on, and it goes as follows. The Montreal Canadiens traded away Tyler Toffoli in exchange for Tyler Pitlick, Emil Heineman, a first in 2022, and a 5th in 2023. Now, let's ignore Tyler Pitlick for now because he unfortunately hasn't really amounted to much in the Montreal Canadiens organization. In fact, he's with the Bruins now, so big change of pace for him. But Emil Heineman as the trade return for Tyler Toffoli is awesome when you consider the fact that the Calgary Flames only really got 2 seasons out of Tyler Toffoli pretty much if you wanted to include the ending stint of the 21-22 year. He had 23 points in 37 games and then 73 points in 82 games the year after, before Toffoli got traded from Calgary over to New Jersey. This is when Craig Conroy took over the team and decided to bring a fire sale. Everybody that Brad Treliving committed to was out. No more Hanifin, no more Toffoli, Markstrom, Tanev, Zadorov, Lindholm, everybody was traded. And while I won't necessarily say that the Devils ended up getting a bad player in Toffoli because they traded him away shortly after to Winnipeg, his career has taken a pretty interesting turn where now he's on the San Jose Sharks. He had signed a pretty beefy deal with that team, and I think Tyler Toffoli is living his best life. But for the Calgary Flames to gather Toffoli, he was good with them. He helped them out in the short term. They made the playoffs with him. They made the second round after all. But unfortunately, that was it. Now, it doesn't take a genius to recognize that for Tyler Toffoli, his contract was going to expire shortly, and so the Montreal Canadiens had it in their best interests to trade him away and get themselves a younger forward in Emil Heineman. Heineman now is doing pretty alright. Back then, he was just a prospect. But I also wanted to talk about one of the other guys that the Canadiens acquired in this trade too. The first-round pick in 2022 that the Habs received in this Toffoli trade was used to select a guy that is now in the AHL's Laval Rocket. It was Philip Machar, a guy whom we had been hyping up for a pretty significant amount of time ever since that 2022 draft came and went. Everybody was talking about Slavkovsky, but everybody was also talking about his buddy. Not Simon Nemec, the second overall guy who went to New Jersey, but Philip Mesar, who was taken 25 picks after in the 26th overall spot. Mesar had a really good profile in the 2022 Slovak League, eventually found his way over into the OHL, did not do too well, unfortunately, in that developmental system. We did make a few videos throughout the past few years expressing some concern over the growth and development of Mesar in the Ontario Hockey League, but in the AHL this year, he's actually been really, really strong, with 4 points in 2 games played. He's got a goal and 3 assists, and he is on pace, like Heineman, for an absurd point production. Now, I doubt that Mesar finishes off the AHL season with 144 points and 36 goals in 72 games, but for the most part, he is one of the top guys in Laval in points, and highlighted by his 3-point night opening up against the Boston Bruins on Friday last week, everything seems to be looking pretty good. The point that I'm trying to make here is that the Montreal Canadiens got themselves 2 very legitimate younger scoring forwards in exchange for Tyler Toffoli. That's ignoring the other draft pick the Habs got in the Toffoli trade. That's ignoring Tyler Pitlick, whom they didn't really see too much value out of anyway. Just Heineman and Mesar in and of itself was great. And the best part is, it's not really like the Calgary Flames are regretting this trade in the slightest either. They don't have really a care in the world that Heineman or this Philip Mesar draft pick is doing pretty alright. Like, they have no reason to care. Why? Because they got their own return for Tyler Toffoli. They cultivated a new locker room. They have their own veteran guys that are sort of trying to help this team build away from the Brad Treliving Calgary Flames days. All they got is Kadri, Huberdeau, Weegar, Anderson, and Blake Coleman, and that's all they need, not to mention Mikael Backlund. The team is now first in the NHL. At the time of recording this audio, the Calgary Flames have been on top of the league. So it's not like they're looking at Montreal and saying, darn it, that Emil Heineman is doing really well. If anything, I would bet that Calgary Flames fans are pretty happy to see Emil Heineman doing the things that he's doing. It might sting to get rid of a prospect who, a few years down the line, proves significantly valuable in the Canadiens' middle to bottom 6 as a 22-year-old guy, but the Calgary Flames are top of the NHL right now. I think they have a lot of other things that they can be happy for instead. So if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Emil Heineman, Tyler Toffoli, and Philip Mesar trade a few years later after it had been done? What are your thoughts on this trade in retrospect in terms of what the Canadiens got, in terms of what the Canadiens sent away? And if you're a Calgary Flames fan watching this video, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments too. How does it feel to see Emil Heineman doing all this? I would think that because the Flames have their own core of young guys that are breaking onto the scene and doing some very good things. Dustin Wolf is finally on the roster. You had all these younger defensemen added over the past few months here, not to mention Coronado, Zary, lots of guys cooking on your forward core. I'd say that the Calgary Flames are really good with their youth right now. They don't necessarily need another player in Heineman, right? I don't know. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this trade a few years down the line? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.